5-4. The Supreme Court has struck down a law that was similar to the Texas law that was there in 2016, though there was a major flip in one of the justices, and that was the Chief Justice, who, when a similar law that was actually broader was up before the court in 2016, though it was clear he would be in the dissent, he had no problem siding with Texas as a dissenter.
John Roberts 3 years ago said the law was constitutional, a law that was much broader than this particular law. This was a more narrowly tailored law. 4 justices dissented. Last time, of course, then you had the switch of justices. What happens here? John Roberts says, I don't agree necessarily with the reasoning of the majority, but because of stare decisis, I am going to stick with that opinion. Now, if that was the case, Plessy versus Ferguson, which was separate but equal, would still be the law of the land. There are times when stare decisis, the courts realize things were wrong. Karematsu, where the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. That case today would obviously not be followed.
Stare decisis simply means that cases that have been decided one way, the Supreme Court or any court should continue to follow that precedent because it's binding on a subsequent court. But as you pointed out, when you had separate but equal in Plessy versus Ferguson, when you had the Japanese internment camps and the Korematsu decision, as you pointed out, stare decisis would mean that we can't deviate from that today. Well, of course we can. This was a cop-out by the Chief Justice and very disappointing.
Listen, he put himself in this position. I don't know why he's made himself out to be another Kennedy. You don't have to have that on the court. You don't have to have the tiebreaker vote. But I do think that he likes the praise. I think he likes the media coverage of this today, in the sense that the liberal media, which is the mainstream media, is praising him. And I think he loves it.
The court just keeps changing abortion laws and rules. And under Casey, of course, they required that there would be an undue burden imposed by the law. And then we saw in Whole Woman's Health, which was the previous case to this June case, that they couldn't prove that there was an undue burden. So the court changes and says, well, if there's no benefit or if it's unnecessary, that's going to equal the undue burden. And so, it's that faulty assumption that abortion is safe and therefore admitting privileges are unnecessary. That's what this whole decision was based on. And we submitted a brief in this case that attacked that erroneous underlying assumption. But it just goes to show that this court or the Supreme Court is willing to keep changing laws and even constitutional laws to protect the judicially fabricated right to abortion.
How far does technology have to get? They have to watch the kid's head get ripped off? Outside? I mean, I don't know. Does it have to be 3D, 4D, 5D? I don't know. We don't even have that D yet, maybe. To a point where they finally are so embarrassed by what they've done that they ignore that it even happened in recent history. Go back in the 1960s Supreme Court. Same court did Roe versus Wade. You probably don't agree with a lot of what they decided.
I'm holding in my hand, if you're watching on TV, the brief that we filed in the case. And this was about admitting privileges to hospitals, although I agree with Jordan, it could have been decided on standing. But what's interesting here, in our brief, we actually attach as an exhibit, and it's probably 65 pages, every time hospitals, ambulances were called to abortion clinics for medical services to be rendered in a hospital, that these doctors don't have to have admitting privileges for. I mean, think about that for a moment. And that was in the brief, and that was in the record, and basically they ignored. They ignored it to get to a desired result here, Andy. This was, in a sense, the shock to me is that Chief Justice Roberts, who I've known for many years, decided that a case that had 3 years of precedent, that was closely divided, could not be overturned.
If you find a judge that you agree with every time, that's not a judge, that's an advocate. But what you can request from a judge, or actually demand from a judge, is that they take the philosophy of judging, they look at the statute, they look at the Constitution, they look at the law, and they apply it as it was written. You have to expect from a judge that you don't have outcome-based judging. This looks to me like an abandonment of apolitical judging. This looks like looking at the political tea leaves, the pressure in Washington, D.C., the social circles. I know that's insulting to say, but it's just reality.
What's the point of the Supreme Court then? Why relitigate any issue if we know that they're just going to go back to why don't we have 3/5? Why do we have Dred Scott? Why do we have these cases even? Why do we go back and fight?